Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Roserade. So today, we need to continue our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game by talking about a rather controversial set. It's Call of Legends. Call of Legends is a weird one, because it wasn't really in the Heart Gold Soul Silver block, which I think it's fair to say ended in the previous set with Triumphant. But it also wasn't in the Black and White block, which would start in the next set, which was the Black and White base set. It was kind of a one-set block all by itself. And it was largely a reprint set with only a few new cards and only a couple of them being good. And at the time, the majority of the player base really didn't like it, saw it as a pointless set. There was a fair bit of anger at the time that we essentially had this set. We only get one set every 3 months, and they were wasting it on this garbage. And yet now, if you want to go and pick up a box of Call of Legends, it is, especially for the era, like, unless you go back to, say, Wizards of the Coast or early Nintendo, this is about the most expensive set out there to buy a sealed box. It's a weird one, ladies and gentlemen. It's a weird one. As a fun little side note, and I never did this before or since, and I never will again, but for some reason I still don't completely understand, I decided to write a complete, comprehensive card-by-card review of this set. Yes, even though it was largely a reprint set and regarded as the worst set in a long time, it came to over 15,000 words. It was a monumental waste of my time. But if anyone wants to see a ridiculously over-the-top comprehensive review of the entire set that I made on the release of this set, please follow the link in the description, because I wasted so much time on that. Now, it was released in English on the 9th of February 2011, and there is no Japanese equivalent. This was not a Japanese set. Essentially, what we got was a bunch of reprints, the other half of that Lost Link mini set that I told you about last week, which incidentally is where the vast majority of the actual good new cards came from, and a few Japanese promos here and there. It was a weird set. Now, one of the coolest things about it was the energy. They gave us some new energy designs here, which, as far as I'm concerned, will forever go down as the greatest energy in the history of the Pokemon trading card game. And they were hollow. Now, I know I showed you these before. These were essentially the Heart Gold Soul Silver energy. But what's different about them in Call of Legends is that they were hollow. And oh my goodness, seeing these in real life, they are about the most beautiful they are the most beautiful energy you will ever see. They are absolutely ridiculous. They were also not particularly common. You'd get maybe a couple in a booster box. Also coming along in the booster boxes, we got shiny Pokemon. That is to say, there were a bunch of, well, there are actually 11 of them, and they had their own numbering, and they were all legendary Pokemon that had come around on the Legend cards, those two Pokemon cards. So we got Deoxys, Dialga, Entei, Groudon, Ho-Oh, Kyogre, Lugia, Palkia, yeah, there really were 3 water ones, there's actually another one, Raikou, Rayquaza, and Suicune, more than a third water. Now, these all did have non-shiny regular versions in the set proper. They were hollows, but they were not shiny. These were all terrible cards. None of these were good cards. None of them saw any play whatsoever. They were all trash garbage. But they were about 1 per booster box. They were some booster boxes had more than one. They were averaged about 1 per booster box. At least that's what most people said. They might have been slightly more. But the point is, they were extremely rare cards. And this led to a really weird set. A set that was not good playability-wise. A set which was largely reprints and had few new cards. But a set that had these 11 amazing shiny cards and these 10 hollow energy, all of which were extremely sought after, but the average box at the time seemed to be about 2 hollow energy, 1 shiny Pokemon per box, meaning trying to collect the set was an absolute nightmare. Although I did check my bundle the other day, I have a complete set of these shiny Pokemon, and nowadays these shiny Pokemon are not cheap. told you it was a weird set, ladies and gentlemen, and it absolutely was. Pokemon Primes had gone, they weren't here anymore. Legend Pokemon had gone, they weren't here anymore. We just had shiny Pokemon. And if we look at the most expensive of them, you're talking shiny Lugia. A raw copy of shiny Lugia will set you back about $300. It's the most popular of the Pokemon that got printed as shinies. That's why it ends up being the most expensive. If you can get these graded as PSA 10s, and they are notoriously difficult to get graded as PSA 10s, these will easily fetch in excess of £1,000 each. And pounds are worth more than dollars. These are extremely valuable cards, especially if you can get them graded very, very highly. But my absolute favourite fact about Shining Legends was that they printed Phanpy, and you know my love for Phanpy, as Phanpy. Now, it was printed as Phanpy in the actual name of the Pokemon, but in the Ultra Thick Skin Pokebody text, it referred to it as Phanpy. Did get corrected, unlike the previous misprint we talked about last week, I want to say, but it was really cool. I know I've got some Phanpy somewhere, and they're so adorable. In terms of pre-releases, the pre-release was Snorlax, the art of which was absolutely amazing, and we didn't have sleeves at the time, but we actually went back to pre-release deck boxes. Yeah, we got rid of sleeves, and we replaced them straight away with deck boxes. And it was kind of beautiful. Although these deck boxes were not like the earlier deck boxes, and fair to say, they didn't last maybe as long as we might have wanted them to. Now, in terms of theme decks here, there were two of them. There was Recon and Retort. Yeah, I know. I like the little theme going on there. Recon was a Tangrowth-based theme deck, focused around grass and fire, and you got yourself a holo Tangrowth, which was cool because Tangrowth was a non-holo in the set proper, so that was exclusive. You then got non-holos of both Magmortar and Ninetales, which were exclusive again. They were only holos in the deck proper. And then you got non-holos of Meganium and a non-holo of Tangrowth as well, just like in the set proper. And if you've been following these history videos, you'll know that 4 non-holo rares and a holo rare, that is pretty gosh darned generous. It is worth pointing out that at the time, they were just about still giving out booster packs in these theme decks, so you would get a booster when you bought them. The Retort deck was based around Lucario. You had Fighting and Lightning, and you got yourself a holo Lucario, which was exclusive because it was a cracked ice holo, which is very, very cool. It was a regular holo in the set proper, and then you got yourself a non-holo, and then you got yourself non-holos of Ampharos, Hitmontop, and Groudon. And the Groudon, Hitmontop, and Lucario non-holos were all exclusive because they were holos normally in the set. Some pretty generous theme decks. Also, the Lucario one did come with a Lucario coin, which makes me rather happy indeed. Now, when we look at the best cards here, it's a little bit of a weird one, because what I think we need to do is really separate it out into reprints and actual new cards. Because one of the really cool things about Call of Legends is if you were a newer player, you could pick this up and you would be able to get lots of really good staple cards. It was a great, great set for newer players and collectors, although it was really hard to collect. Seasoned people who only cared about playing just went and bought a couple of singles and ignored the set, but for new players it was awesome. So the Jirachi I told you about, and they were all alternate art prints, many of which never made their way out into Japan, so we had these artworks that were not only different, but they were never actually released in Japan. So the Jirachi I mentioned before with the awesome ability that lets you accelerate psychic energy to it and then devolve your opponent's Pokemon, that was there. The Leafeon that did 50 damage for each special condition on the defending Pokemon, that was there. The Ninetales that let you discard a fire energy from your hand and draw 3 cards, That made it in. The Smeargle, which was one of the very, very best cards in the entire game at the time, let you, if it was active, copy one of your opponent's supporters. That was ridiculous. The Umbreon with Moonlight Fang that made you immune to Pokemon with Pokebodies or Poke Powers next turn. One of my very favourite cards. And even though the regular art was drawn by Mitsuhiro Rita, so was the alternate art. That makes me very happy. Cleffa, that was probably the best card at the time. It had Eek, which let you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw a new hand of 6 cards for 0 energy. And then you go to sleep and you're invulnerable while you're asleep. And you've got free retreat. It was amazing. Although with that, we also got the Tyrogue that was basically the same, except it could do 30 damage for 0 energy. It was the Cleffa counter. Miss Magius was a fun card that for 2 energy did 30 damage for each trainer, supporter and stadium card in your opponent's hand. And Slowking that we keep mentioning in a bunch of decks because it's got the Poke Power that lets you rearrange the top 3 cards of either player's deck. Over in the trainer realm, we had Copycat, let you shuffle your hand into your deck and match your opponent's hand size, saw a huge amount of play. Dual Ball let you flip 2 coins and for each head search for a basic Pokemon and put it into your hand. Unless you were playing an item lock or trainer lock as it was back then deck, that was a 4 of in every deck. Professor Oak's New Theory let you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards. That was a 4 of in I think every deck at the time. And then Sage's Training, which let you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 2 in your hand and discard the other 3. Again, that was an out-and-out staple in a huge amount of decks at the time. But there were a few new cards in the set which were properly competitively relevant, including Pachirisu. Now, Pachirisu's attack was trash garbage, but the Poke Power, when you played it from your hand to your bench, you got to attach 2 lightning energy to it. It was immense. But it also formed a wonderful, wonderful combo with Shaman from Unleashed to let you move your energy round the field. So what you would do is you would play Pachirisu to the bench, but then you would use Shaman to move the energy to whatever Pokemon you wanted. It worked beautifully with Magnezone Prime. Remember that let you Lost Zone as much energy as you liked from any of your Pokemon, doing 50 damage for each one you Lost Zoned. So this would get more energy onto the field, which seemed pretty gosh darn good. Relicanth goes down as one of my very favourite artworks ever, and it's pretty much the only time I just went and filled like 4 binder pages full of Relicanth because it was a common and I adored the artwork. It was from that Lost Link mini set I told you about, which I think on a personal level goes down as my favourite artwork for any set ever. Just a shame it was a 40 card mini set, but it really did have themed artwork. You can tell the Lost Link cards just by looking at them. But what was good about Relicanth was 1 colourless energy, put a card from your hand into the Lost Zone, and then draw 3 cards. It was a pretty nice draw engine. Drawing 3 cards for a single energy on a basic Pokemon is really good. But remember I told you about Mew Prime last week, which let you copy the attacks of any Pokemon in the Lost Zone? Well, if you're playing a Mew Prime deck, and a bunch of people did, Relicanth was an amazing starting Pokemon. Now, Lost Remover was a very, very cool card. It let you put a special energy from any of your opponent's Pokemon into the Lost Zone. More recently, we have seen Enhanced Hammer. This is just better than Enhanced Hammer, because Enhanced Hammer discards and this puts into the Lost Zone. Now, at the time, there wasn't actually anything that could get energy back, by which I mean special energy. We did, before Lost Zone get rotated, see a couple of weird little niche cards that could, but I tell you what, this was a great, great card for getting rid of special energy. Saw a whole bunch of play. We also saw Lost World. Now, this was the one that was supposed to break Gengar Prime wide open. And a lot of people were rather upset that we got Gengar Prime in Triumphant, but we had to wait a set to get Lost World. You see, Lost World said that if you had 6 of your opponent's Pokemon in the Lost Zone, you could literally just choose to win the game. And then Gengar, whenever it was active and a Pokemon got KO'd, they'd go to the Lost Zone. Although the only attack dropped 4 damage counters for 2 energy, it wasn't good. But for 1 energy minimum, you got to look at your opponent's hand and lost zone a number of Pokemon in their hand equal to the number of psychic energy on Gengar. People genuinely thought at the time that this was going to be an overly good, unfair deck that was going to ruin the game. Turned out to be kind of rubbish and never really made a dent, which was a bit sad. Although one card that was used in it was Mime Jr. Mime Jr. was another one of these baby Pokemon, same sweet sleeping face ability that made it invulnerable when asleep, same free retreat, same free attack that put it to sleep, but what it did was put the top card of your opponent's deck into the lost zone, and obviously you'd cross your fingers and hope it was a Pokemon. It did see play in a bunch of Gengar decks. It was nice for a little bit of disruption, but in your everyday run-of-the-mill deck, you'd still choose Clever over it like every time. Research Record was another very cool card. It let you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and any that you wanted to keep on the top of your deck, you could in whatever order you liked, and any other cards went to the bottom of your deck. So if you wanted particular cards because of attacks that looked for energy, etc., this was really good, and it was just really nice for consistency, saw a bunch of play. It wasn't a staple in every deck, but it was a very cool card. And then a card that really flew under the radar was the Teddy Ursa. Now, it wasn't Ursaring, it wasn't a good Ursaring in the set. It was all about Teddy Ursa. For 1 colourless energy, you flipped a coin, and if heads, your opponent cannot play any trainer cards from his or her hand during their next turn, and any damage done to Teddy Ursa by attacks is reduced by 30. And this legitimately led people to start playing Ursaring decks because you could set up behind this Teddy Ursa. It was an awful lot of fun. Now there were a few kind of fringe cards we need to mention very quickly as well. The Lucario, same one from the theme deck. For 2 colourless energy, did 30 damage plus 20 more for each of your Pokemon in the Lost Zone. Obviously auto-lost literally against Gengar, but outside of that, you could build up a decent deck here using things like Relicanth, for instance, which could be kind of fun. There was a Mr. Mime in the set that had a Poké Power that let both you and your opponent reveal their hand. Really good for getting information, and you gave it away, but we had enough cards like Copycat that could shuffle your hand into your deck, so you could essentially use Mr. Mime to check your opponent's hand, but then play a card that hid yours. Tangrowth, the one from the theme deck, was one that I liked very much indeed, because it did 20 damage for each energy attached to Tangrowth, which could build up. Also for free energy, 30 damage, flip a coin if heads paralysis, if tails, put 1 energy from the defending Pokemon into the Lost Zone. That could get super annoying. And then Zangoose. Yes, you will notice that pretty much all the good new cards, like I think maybe all of them but Teddy Ursa, maybe there's 1 or 2 others, came from Lost Link. Lost Link was a nice little set. It just got split into 2 and we got half of it in this set. Zangoose for free energy did 30 damage and put one of your opponent's cards in the Lost Zone, and you were able for 1 energy to boost it up to 80 the following turn. It was kind of cool. It's all playing a couple of decks. Not a powerhouse set playability-wise at all, but we had things like Pachirisu, Lost Remover, Lost World. There were some good cards in here. And weirdly enough, it did actually lead to some genuine decks. Now, the Gengar one is a deck we do need to mention. Now, I have done an entire video about this deck. I will link that video in the description if I remember. Also, go and check out some of the other history videos because these take so long to make. But essentially, the Gengar deck really was all built around Gengar. Now, you would see Gengar trying to get your opponent's Pokemon in the Lost Zone, using Curse Drop with the Catastrophe Pokebody, but most of the time you'd be using Hurl into Darkness. But you would use the Spiritomb we looked at last week that would force your opponent to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw a new hand of 6 cards. So otherwise, your opponent would just try and make sure there were no Pokemon in their hand, so you couldn't use Hurl into Darkness. This was a way to prevent that. You would play Mime Jr. here as a nice little starter, and obviously Mr. Mime was great here because you could just look at your opponent's hand and see if they had Pokemon in, and then that would decide whether you dropped Spiritomb or not. We also saw Mew Prime seen as a little bit of a fun little tech here, because you could essentially copy Gengar with a basic Mew. It would make it a little bit faster, potentially, to get rolling. Seeker was a great card here because it made your opponent pick up one of their bench Pokemon, which would, of course, guarantee that they had Pokemon in their hand to hurl into darkness. Twins was an absolutely amazing card. It let you search for any 2 cards in your deck if you were behind on prizes, but the deck generally used Hurl into Darkness rather than taking prizes, so that was amazing. And we would see some people using Magnezone as a draw engine. It seemed so good on paper, and it seemed to have all of the tricks it needed, and yet it never ended up being much good. Now, Magnezone Prime with Pachirisu was a really cool deck that I was a big fan of. Remember, Magnezone's got that amazing attack, lets you Lost Zone energy from anywhere, 50 damage for each one Lost Zoned, but it also had an ability to let you draw until you had 6 cards in your hand, so you had a built-in draw engine if you were playing the deck. Pachirisu was a guaranteed 4 of here, because you would just get 8 extra energy on the field during the game. And the other way to get energy on the field was Electrode's ability, which let you KO it. Yes, it gave up a prize. And then look at the top 7 cards of your deck and attach as many energy there as you like. You did discard the other cards, though, which could be awkward for your Magnezone line. So, I don't know, cross your fingers, I suppose. But Electrode not only got energy on the field, it also made sure you were behind on prizes, which meant that Twins became an absolutely brilliant option. And then you played the list on Jason Kozinski's wonderful blog, you should check it out, link in the description, played 23 energy. This was never an absolute powerhouse deck, but if you wanted a really fun, hyper-aggressive aggro deck, and they are my favourite kind of decks, then Magnezone with Pachirisu and Electrode was absolutely wonderful. But we also saw a little bit of play and a little bit of love for a deck that was generally known as Bearhug. Now, according to the lovely PTCG archive, a wonderful website you should all be checking out, link in the description, Xander Perro actually won US Nationals with this deck in the junior division, which is a bit ridiculous because it's a weird deck. Although Xander has gone on to be a top player in the Masters division, as the top juniors and seniors tend to. A lot of people think juniors and seniors are easier divisions, and in some ways they are, because obviously critical thinking, problem solving, these are skills we develop and hone as we get older. But there are so many juniors and seniors that won nationals, worlds, etc. when they were juniors and seniors, and then went on to be the best players in the Masters division. So how did the deck work? Well, I've already mentioned the Teddy Ursa with Fake Tears, which would basically aim from the very first turn of the game to lock your opponent out of the game. And it is worth mentioning that in the 2011 Nationals at US, this was when we had the emergency Heart Gold Soul Silver on rotation. So if you're wondering why Spiritomb wasn't in this deck, it's because Spiritomb got emergency rotated. Essentially, Black and White came in and it had some new rules, and Black and White rules with cards from the Diamond and Pearl era, it literally broke the game. It was all to do with the Sableye that came around in Stormfront. Again, I've done a video. I will try and remember to link it in the description. But the point is, Spiritomb was out, Teddy Ursa was in. Flip a coin. If heads, you item lock them or trainer lock them for the entire game. You then go into Vileplume here, which would then leave them trainer locked for the entire game. You too, but you built your deck largely trainer free, so it really didn't matter. And then, of course, you would have Roserade, because when you attached an energy, if it was grass, they're confused. If it's psychic, they're poisoned. If it's rainbow, which it probably would be, it's both. So then, of course, your opponent is poisoned and confused and trainer locked. And one you would really want to use here would be Yanmega Prime. Remember, if you could match your opponent's hand size, you would be able to attack for free. So you could either do 40 damage anywhere on the field, or just 70 damage to the active. which was pretty gosh darn good. You had that Jirachi that would accelerate energy to itself, though you didn't play any basic Psychic. But remember, Jirachi accelerated Psychic energy, but Time Hollow worked off any energy. And if you were attacking with Yanmega, you didn't need to attach energy to your active. So obviously you would just put energy on Jirachi when you could, and then you would devolve after spreading damage around and take a bunch of cheeky KOs. And because we were playing Vileplume, there was one Blossom here. Was just really nice to take a damage counter off of each of your Pokemon every turn. Same evolution line as Vileplume here. So why not, ladies and gentlemen? Why not? And obviously, because you're playing Yanmega, we've got both Judge and Copycat to match your opponent's hand size. Judge made both players go to a 4-card hand. Copycat just copied your opponent. And then we had Sunflora here, which could either search out your grass Pokemon, it's a grass deck, or just get you an extra card to try and match your opponent's hand size. It was a weird kind of mishmash deck with Vileplume, Yanmega, Ursa Ring, and some other tricks. And I tell you what, it's a really good deck. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. A weird set with no real chase Pokemon like that. We just had those weird shiny Pokemon. Great for collectors, though really awkward to actually collect. Not great for seasoned players, because very new cards, but great for new players because of the amount of reprinted staples. I promised you a weird set. I'm fairly sure I delivered. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you guys. Were you around at the time? What did you think about it? If you weren't around at the time, I want to know what you think about it now, having seen it in this video. So go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.